Hey coders, welcome to Medical Coding Scenarios, brought to you by CEU Hub, where coders connect. Quick disclaimer, CEU Hub provides educational content for informational purposes only. This content does not constitute professional coding advice. Always verify codes using current official coding manuals, guidelines, and payer-specific requirements. Hey coders, this is episode 4, part 2. Remember Margaret from episode 3? Well, she's back. After being diagnosed with the end-stage renal disease, she needs a more permanent dialysis access. Today we're coding her AV fistula surgery, both for the surgeon and the anesthesiologist. So let's code. Today's scenario. Margaret Wilson from episode 3 was diagnosed with end-stage renal disease. She went home with a temporary dialysis catheter, but that's not meant to last forever. So today she's at an outpatient surgery center getting an AV fistula created. That's a permanent dialysis access. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a vascular surgeon, will create a connection in Margaret's left arm. Let's walk through the key details from the operative report. Our patient is Margaret Wilson. She's 68 years old, and she's currently at the Midwest Ambulatory Vascular Surgery Center. That's outpatient. The surgeon is Dr. Sarah Mitchell. She's a vascular surgeon. Pre-op diagnosis is the end-stage renal disease, and she's dialysis dependent. Post-op diagnosis, same, end-stage renal disease, and she's dialysis dependent. Procedure performed is a left radial. What the surgeon did was create an end to side anastomosis between the radial artery and the cephalic vein in the left forearm at the wrist. Direct connection. No graft material used. The surgical time was 60 minutes. Anesthesia time was 90 minutes. Quick explanation. What is an AV fistula? An AV fistula is not a catheter. There's no device implanted. The surgeon connects an artery directly to the vein. High pressure artery blood flows through the vein, making it bigger and stronger over a 6 to 8 week time period. Once it matures, the dialysis needle goes directly into the vein, and there's no permanent catheter needed, just the needles from the machine into the veins of the patient. This is the golden standard. It's a patient's own vein, not a foreign device that can get infected. So Margaret keeps her temporary catheter for about 6 to 8 weeks until the fistula is ready for the permanent dialysis treatment. Okay, so we're going to open up to the index, and I am going to base my search from the operative report. So the operative report says direct anastomosis, forearm in to side, no graft, no transposition. So let's look up arterial venous anastomosis. It's right here. It say for increased blood flow, and it give us codes 36818 through 36821. So I'm going to take that to the tabler. I always like to start off with the last code. So let's start and look for the 36821. So let's go to the tabler. Okay. So we're looking for our code, the 36821. And I found it here. And this looks like a children's code. Let's read the parent code. Parent code says arteriovenous anastomosis open by upper arm cephalic vein transposition. And then we're going to go down to our children code. And instead of the transposition, it says direct any site. So to code our anesthesia code, we're going to take it back to the index. And then from the index, we're going to find our main term. anesthesia. And then from anesthesia, we're going to go vascular surgery. From vascular surgery, we're going to go down to arm lower, and that gives us the code 01840 through 01852. So we're going to take these codes to the tabular. Of course, I like to start with the last one, so I'm going to look up the code 01852. Now we're at the tabular list, and we're going to look up that last code that we found in the index was the 01852, and that says fluoroscopy. That is not um, the procedure that we're doing. So let's go up one to the parent code. Anesthesia for procedure on vein or forearm, wrist, and hand, not otherwise specified. Well, we know specifically our why we're doing our procedure. So I'm going to go up one. And this says 01844 anesthesia for vascular shunt or shunt revision, any type, example, dialysis. So this is going to be my code. The 01844 is because we're doing a procedure to create the AV fistula for dialysis. Okay, so with the anesthesia codes, we're going to need modifiers. Now let me explain the anesthesia modifiers. They are different from the surgical modifiers. So I am going to show, right, if we go to the front of the book, we're going to look at the physical status anesthesia modifiers. So the P1 is a normal healthy patient. P2, a patient with mild systemic disease. P3, a patient with severe systemic disease. P4, a patient with severe systemic disease that is a constant threat to life. P5, a moribund patient who is not expected to survive without an operation. P6, a declared brain dead patient whose organs are being removed for donor purposes. Now, when we look at P6, we know offhand that is not Margaret. P5 is generally reserved for patients who are dying in critical condition, like a massive head trauma, a ruptured aneurysm, severe sepsis, something along those lines. P4 applies to a patient who has severe um, chronic heart failure and a patient who is not on regular dialysis, because if they miss dialysis, this is unstable and it's life threatening. But with in Margaret's case, she is getting her permanent port. She is doing dialysis. So that's why in Margaret's case, we're going to do the P3. And this is commonly used with patient who is in stage renal disease status and who are, they are compliant with their regular scheduled dialysis. So we're going to assign the P3 modifier for Margaret's physical status. Now, when we're looking at our anesthesia care modifier, we're going to go into the Picks book. We're going to trade this book out for this one. Now that we have our Picks book, we're going to go in the back of the book where the modifiers are, and we're going to look up anesthesia modifiers. Now we're in the back of the Picks book where we are looking at our anesthesia modifier chart. We already kind of went over the physical status chart in the CPT book. So we already gave Margaret the P3 status. Now we're going to go over into our anesthesiologist modifier because that's who performed the anesthesia care. So we're going to attach the AA for anesthesia services performed personally by an anesthesiologist. But we're also going to append the QS because the documentation said that it was monitored anesthesia care services. It's supposed to be a coding scenario. But let's go into a little bit of billing because with an anesthesia code, um, the way they bill their units is by the time that they spend caring for a patient while they're under anesthesia. So if the anesthesiologist say, hey, we start anesthesia at 9:15 and it ended at 10:45, that is a total of 90 minutes. Now anesthesia time units is 15 minutes equals 1 unit. So 1 unit is 15-minute intervals. So 90 minutes divided by 15 would give us 6 units. So when billing this anesthesia code, we will bill out the anesthesia code, the 3 modifiers, and the 6 units for the total time that was spent caring for the patient. All right, let's do a quick recap of what we just coded. So our ICD-10, both providers will use the N18.6 for the end-stage renal disease, plus the Z99.2 for the dependence on renal dialysis. For the surgical procedure, the CPT code is the 36821 with the modifier of LT for the left side. And that is for the arteriovenous anastomosis direct site. For the anesthesia code, the CPT is 01844, and that's for anesthesia for vascular access. The modifier of AA, and that's for anesthesia services performed by an anesthesiologist. The modifier QS, and that's for monitor anesthesia care. And the patient status code modifier of P3. That is it for Coding Scenario Sunday. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next Saturday with another coding scenario. Until then, keep coding.